The focus of topic 3 is going to be the distributive property, which is another property that you use a lot in algebra. In fact, you probably use this property more at this level than you use a lot of other ones, okay? So the distributive property just states that the distributive property allows us to eliminate parentheses by multiplying through a sum or a difference. So you can multiply through addition or subtraction, and that will help you eliminate parentheses, which can then help you, in many cases, simplify further. So symbolically, we have, if we have A and then in parentheses times B plus C, so A times parentheses B plus C, we would take the A on the outside and multiply it by any of the terms on the inside, multiply it by all of the terms on the inside. So I would get A times B plus A times C. Now, if we had subtraction inside parentheses, it works exactly the same way. You just need to be a bit more cognizant of your signs. So if I had A times in parentheses B minus C, I would get A times B. And then A times negative C would end up giving me AB times or AB minus AC. So just be really careful with your signs there. You could also have more than two things inside parentheses. You could have three things, four things, 10 things inside parentheses. The process is still the same. You take what's outside the parentheses and multiply it by every single term inside parentheses, watching your signs, okay? So let's go ahead and practice using the distributive property, okay? So example 3 says use the distributive property to remove each set of parentheses. Well, for part A, we have 8 rather, and then inside parentheses, we have 3x minus 9y. So this reads 8 times 3x minus 9y. What we want to do is we want to remove the parentheses by multiplying the 8 by both of the terms inside parentheses. So technically what we're getting is 8 times 3x and then minus 8 times 9y. Because 8 is positive and 9y is negative, that is going to give us a negative product there, okay? Now, because we already know the associative property, remember from previous video, we could regroup this as 8 times 3 times x minus 8 times 9 times y. So we've just regrouped these numbers, which allows us to very easily multiply. 8 times 3 is 24, so that gives me 24x. Negative 8 times 9 is negative 72, and then we just keep the y. So when you multiply a number and a variable, you just write them side by side. You don't have to put a multiplication symbol in there, okay? Now, a lot of times we'll skip these two steps and we just kind of do this in our head. But if you need to work these out step by step, this is the process. Take whatever's outside, multiply it by each term on the inside. If necessary, apply the associative property to move things around, and then get your final simplified answer. Okay? So for part B, we are multiplying everything by a negative on the outside, so watch those signs, all right? So we want to take negative 5 and multiply it by 2x squared minus 5x plus 2. So I would take a negative 5 times a positive 2x, that gives me a negative, so I get 5 times 2x squared. For the next term, I've got negative 5 on the outside, and then I have negative 5 on the inside. Remember, when you multiply two negatives, it really makes it a positive. So this is going to be positive 5 times 5x. And then I have negative 5 times positive 2. A positive and a negative make a negative product, so I get just 5 times 2. And then if you need to, you can rewrite this using the associative property. I generally don't do this step right here where we do the associative property. I just do it kind of in my head. I know that if I take negative 5 times 2, I get negative 10. And then I just want to include the x squared. I don't have to do anything weird. When you have a variable multiplied by a number, you just write them side by side. The multiplication is assumed, okay? 5 times 5 is 25, so I get plus 25x. And then remember, negative 5 times 2, we get a negative 10. So that's it. Just on something like this is pretty easy. And I find that a lot of times it's the easy stuff students miss. They rush through it. They're like, oh, this is super easy. And they just blow through the problem really quickly. And then they don't go back and check for simple mistakes. So on questions like this, go back and check for those simple mistakes that you could potentially make, like sign errors, for example. All right, part C is a little different. We just have a negative in front of parentheses. Well, there's a hidden 1, really. This is technically negative 1 times 7x plus 2y minus 9 in parentheses. So what we're distributing is really a negative 1. So watch your signs. Negative 1 times positive 7x is going to be negative 1 times 7x. Negative 1 times positive 2y is going to be negative again. So we're going to get negative 1 times 2y. And then -1 times -9 is going to be positive. So we're going to get a plus 1 times 9. And once you get the hang of this, you can do almost all of this in your head. Okay, you don't have to show intermediate steps, but if you're struggling with it, show these intermediate steps. All right, finally, -1 times 7 is -7. Keep the x. -1 times 2 is -2. Keep the y. And then 1 times 9 is just positive 9. And there you have it. So that is the distributive property, and this is going to be a big part of what we do when we start working with algebra. Okay, so make sure you practice this, make sure you know your signs, and have a general understanding of how these properties work together.